The Ravens lose to the Kansas City Chiefs 27-20 in the game that came literally down to a toe from Isaiah Likeley. How did the Ravens respond? We find out. Welcome to Ravens Talk. I'm your host, Samuel Njoku. Again, we mentioned Ravens lose to the Chiefs 27-20 in a game that I predicted would go the other way. We'll talk all about the Ravens' loss, what caused the loss, some things to be happy about. We'll also discuss what the Ravens need to do in order to combat the loss in Week 2 against the Las Vegas Raiders as the home season opener comes to Baltimore this Sunday. But first, Ravens lose. The Ravens lose to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I actually put it on YouTube that the Ravens will win. And of course, Chiefs fans are they're having a little bit of fun, which is, part of the NFL experience. Kind of love it, kind of enjoy the back and forth with the Chiefs fans. So kudos to the Chiefs for getting the job done. Of course, a lot of things that happened in the AFC Championship game did not happen in this game. A lot of things that I saw were very, very, very good to see. And if you're a Ravens fan, I think you'll be pleased with what the Ravens did on the field on Thursday. For starters, I definitely predicted that the Ravens would run the ball more. The offensive line, kind of sucky, if I'm being honest. I know the grades are out and the Ravens were decent at pass blocking, and I agree there was some good pass blocking, especially during the second half when the pass rush was tired pretty much from gashing through that pass offense in the first half. But the Ravens' pass offense, protection-wise, definitely held their own. Run blocking was atrocious. I mean, Derrick Henry had nowhere to go. It was Derrick Henry and Derrick Henry alone that was able to get the ball in the end zone, to hit first, strike first against the Chiefs to take a 7-0 lead. But after that, not much else. It became the Lamar Jackson show. And Lamar Jackson did what he does best, and that's run the football and make amazing throws. And we mentioned it last week. The Chiefs and the Ravens were going to be decided about who can run the football the best. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, how do you stop both of them? Well, even though the Chiefs won, they did not do a good job of stopping Lamar Jackson running the football. In fact, combined, I believe the Ravens averaged 5.8 yards a carry, which is going to win you a lot of football games most of the time. But there were some miscues in the red zone in the final drive that really give the Ravens the win that we'll talk about. But overall, you got to say, you have to like what you saw. Todd Monken in year 2 looks to be implementing more of his style of offense in this unit. The passing concepts make actual sense this time. Players running routes to leave other players open. Giving the defense something to think about as far as in and outs, highs and lows. It was good to see. Unfortunately, the Ravens didn't get the win, but that's okay. We mentioned it last week. The banner's dropping. It's Kansas City. Arrowhead is a tough place to play. You got Andy Reid, and of course, you got Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be tough to get the win, but to come within a toe's length of winning the football games says where this football team is at, especially in week 1 in the season. And the Ravens mentioned it. Some players were a little agitated, a little salty, which I get, saying that this is the Chiefs' best shot. If this is the Chiefs' best shot, that it's not going to be the same way in the AFC Championship game. And to the Chiefs' credit, I don't think this is their best shot. I think this is week 1 for the Chiefs as well as week 1 for the Ravens. It's going to be a question of who improves the most come January. Who's going to be the best of the best when these two teams looking like eventually meet? Barring injury or circumstance, these two teams will meet in some way, shape, or form in January. At least that's what it looks like. There's going to be a lot of teams that don't look so hot in week 1. The Texans look good. The Bills won their game. They did okay, but I don't know. Still not sold on Josh Allen, to be honest. Sue me. We'll see. But it's looking like the Ravens and the Chiefs are going to be the top 2 teams in the conference, and you're going to have to put in your best foot forward. And I think, to the Chiefs' credit, they will do so. The Ravens need to make sure that they match that. But let's talk a little less about the Chiefs and more about what the Ravens need to do, because the Chiefs are gone. The Chiefs are focused on the Bengals. The Ravens better be focused on the Raiders and try and shore up some issues. And the main issue, as we mentioned, is the offensive line. Ronnie Stanley was great at left tackle. In fact, he looked like his old self. He looks like he's fighting for a contract. I mean, coming into the season, if he's playing like this, the Ravens have a decision to make. Tyler Linderbaum, fantastic. Fantastic center. There's a reason why the Ravens drafted him is where they did, and he's shown nothing but exceptional play since then. And that's it. Let me adjust my glasses when I say this. That is it. Voorhees, didn't look as great as I thought. Rosengarten didn't get much playing time. He split carries with, split time with Patrick McCarry, who also looked okay, but sometimes even he was getting beat by Chris Jones. And then you have Daniel Faalele, who just does not look like a guard at this point in his career. And the question you have to ask yourself, if you're a Ravens fan, or if you're a coach, or even a teammate, how much are you willing to sacrifice the play of your offense to get reps for Daniel Faalele? I know we saw the writing on the wall in preseason. He got a lot of snaps because the Ravens obviously believe they need it. And maybe they see that his ceiling is higher than Rosengarten. No, higher than Ben Cleveland's. And I agree. But, man, the floor of Daniel Faalele is rock bottom. I mean, it just does not look good on film. And Ben Cleveland, we saw Ben Cleveland. Maybe he's not the best pass blocker, but he's solid as a run blocker. And we need a guy in the offensive line, if you're a Ravens fan or a Ravens coach, to get holes ready for Derrick Henry to run through. Derrick Henry had to run like he was Saquon Barkley. I mean, one hole closes, he has to shift to another hole to possibly make a play, and it wasn't cutting it. It just didn't look good on film, and the Ravens have a decision to make. Of course, if you ask John Harbaugh, everything's fine.
Not a lot of success Thursday night. What did you see when you watched the run game?
I think it's a great point. I think it's going to be every game is going to be kind of interesting and different. I like the way the run game looked for the most part with just the running back run game. There were some plays that I'd like to see be blocked a little better, but other plays that were blocked really well. And then we have rushed for 185 yards overall, and a lot of that's Lamar, but that's the formula. The formula is all the guys together. It's not just the one guy. I think we didn't bring Derrick in here to be, the guy that gets the ball 30 times a game. He's done that before. That's really not the plan. The plan is Derrick, Lamar, Mark, Isaiah, Zay, Bate, Nelly. That's kind of the plan in this offense going forward. So I think that evaluation will be best made, over the course of the season. And I'm very confident there's going to be games where Derrick's going to go for 100 plus or more, and you're going to be asking me why Isaiah only got 2 catches. That's probably going to happen during the course of the season, and that's going to be good for us. That's what we want to be. We want to be unpredictable that way. Yeah. And where does the game take us? As we get into the game.
Roger Rosengarten in for a couple series in the first half. Are you guys pretty committed to giving him more game action, finding opportunities for him to play a little right tackle?
Yeah, I think just it would be smart. He's a talented player. It would be smart to develop him, as we go. You got the veteran guy, Pat McCarry's, I think is about as solid of a player as you're ever going to see. Knows what he's doing, trustworthy, been there before. That environment, Pat was what we thought was the best there, and I think going forward. But also, Roger is an up-and-coming player, and we want to make sure that we keep giving him opportunities to grow.
Those lines, earlier we were talking about progress from week 1 to week 2. It happens for all players. How much of that progress do you want to see on that offensive line, among everybody? And I guess from a chemistry standpoint.
How much? I'd like to see it be 10 million times better. That's what I want. But you think it'll be 10 million times better? Is it gonna be twice as good?
Depends on the baseline.
You're gonna get the baseline is pretty darn good. Baseline is pretty darn good in that environment against that defense. I'm not as verklempt. Is that the right word? Verklempt?
No, but go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
It is a word.
It doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you, obviously, or some others. I'm not too worried about the offensive line because I know how hard they work and I know how talented they are. And I watch all the other offensive lines in the National Football League. And I think if you applied some of the same standard to the other offensive lines out there, you'd be like, oh, boy, it's a tough position to play against these guys. So our offensive line is going to be really good this year. I believe that. And we're working hard towards that. So I'm not going to sit here and doubt those guys. I'm going to coach those guys. And those guys are going to get out there and play. And I think by the end of the season, you're going to feel real good about our offensive line.
That was John Harbaugh, and, it's tough to disagree with him. In some aspects, you got to give it to him. John Harbaugh is loyal. Some say to a fault, but he is loyal. There are some things that you see from the Ravens offensive line that gives you, some hope. I mean, Daniel Faalele is a big guy. And if he can get his footwork down and find a way to move these defenders away from the line of scrimmage, then yes. he will be a force. But how much time do the Ravens have? This is not the MLB. You do not get 162 games to get your wins up. You get 17 chances to put points up on that win column. And the more losses you take, the less likely it is you make the playoffs. And you cannot have a quarterback the stature of Lamar Jackson and keep him away from the playoffs because of stubbornness. I mean, that's just the way it's looking because that week 1 film looked awful. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. Now, I am not the guy to really knock a player to such a degree because I think that Daniel Falele will have his moments, have his chances to succeed, improve, and maybe sometime this year he gets it. Maybe next year is a year. But how much time are you taking with a project like this and, losing guys like Derrick Henry to the backfield for losses, giving chances for pass rushers to get to your star quarterback and possibly get him injured? These are the things that you have to think about as a coach. So I don't know how long this project lasts. I just think that the Ravens need to do their due diligence and really think about how this offensive line is going to be constructed. It's not all on Daniel Falele. Let's just point it out right now. Yes, it's the weakest link, but he's not the only weak link. I mean, there are 2 interior guards that are really playing poorly, and Voorhees and Falele, and then you have Rosengarten and Patrick McCarry splitting time, and we don't know who's the main guy. You got to get a cohesive unit. Give these guys 17 games to get themselves together, get acclimated to being a team because it's a lot like a dance out there. And each guy has a responsibility to the other. They work together. There's synergy involved, and each person plays differently. It's just not cohesive right now with this offensive line. And if the Ravens want to take their chances and get a shot at winning the championship and into New Orleans this summer, not this summer, this winter, this January, February, whatever you want to call it, then they got to get their act together. And the offensive line, I think, will be the determining factor. Either they win the Super Bowl with this offensive line or they miss the playoffs. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. The O-line is too important, especially with how I perceive this offense to look during the offseason, especially after they acquired Derrick Henry. When we come back, we'll talk a little more about the Ravens team. We'll see that there are other players who performed very well. A lot of questions that Ravens fans have after a performance from a certain somebody, and we'll delve on the next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. We mentioned that the Ravens lose to the Chiefs, but there are a lot of good things that I saw from that game. If you watch my show on YouTube called Pivotal Moments, we look at the most pivotal moments, pivotal plays that either came out with the victory or a loss for the Ravens, what those plays were, how they affected the outcome. So make sure you check it out. But the main guy that I spoke about in that first episode was Isaiah Likeley, and he looked amazing. Now, a lot of people are talking about how Mark Andrews is taking a step back, or, as far as talent-wise, he didn't look as great. But you got to realize the Chiefs' main objective in that game was to keep Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson from connecting. And boy, did Steve Spagnuolo do a good job of that. So shout out to him, shout out to the Chiefs defense, because Mark Andrews was completely eliminated from the game. But what did that do? That created opportunities for Isaiah Likeley, created opportunities for Rashad Bateman, created opportunities for Zay Flowers to make plays, and they did. But Isaiah Likeley shined brightest. I mean, he looked good. He picked up right where he left off. We talked about it during the offseason. It looked like Isaiah Likeley did a lot to improve both as a blocker and as a pass catcher. We saw a tidbit of that blocking during the Ravens game. I mean, of course, the pass catching, the smooth moves that emulated Lamar Jackson back in high school, and of course, that touchdown that would have been, had he been a couple of shoe sizes short, maybe a white cleat there would have helped the Ravens pick up the win. But all in all, Isaiah Likeley looked masterful. And moving forward, the Ravens had to find a way. And in fact, it looks like they did. That final play of the game, Isaiah Likeley and Mark Andrews were on the field with Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers. That's the formula. Keep Derrick Henry back there with Lamar Jackson. Those are the cohesive units, the pieces you need to have a successful season. I think the Ravens do that moving forward. The Raiders, or whatever team the Ravens face moving forward, do not have the luxury of just focusing in on Mark Andrews now that Isaiah Likeley's there. You got to find a way to stop both of them. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. The way to do it, apparently, watching this game is apparently go up by a touchdown. Go up by a touchdown and everything turns to you know what. So the Ravens, if they keep the lead, will have a problem. Of course, if they go down some, the Ravens have to learn to not panic and use your tools. Do not deviate from the game plan. Be the running team that you are and use the pass to set up the run and vice versa. That's how you do it, baby. That's how you win the game, and the Ravens have the tools to succeed in that regard. But Isaiah Likeley looked fantastic. He looked magnificent in that game, and I really, really like what I saw from him. And hopefully, moving forward, the Ravens find a way to implement both Andrews and Isaiah Likeley because, again, like I said, the Chiefs often triple team Mark Andrews. I don't think the Raiders, I don't think the Cowboys, the Bengals, and whoever else plays the Ravens moving forward will have that luxury because of how explosive it appears Isaiah Likeley is. On the defense, Zachary Orr's first game as a DC didn't go as well as you'd hope because, of course, the Ravens pick up the loss, and that deciding touchdown was the miscue by Marlon Humphrey believing that he had safety help up top. We don't know if that's because a safety was supposed to be there or if Marlon Humphrey just didn't know the play or if Zachary Orr was confused as to what the play should be or the way he put it out there. We don't know. As viewers, if you're watching the film, it's very hard to decide that. You just don't know. Only the Ravens do. But all in all, I think the Ravens played a good game on defense. I think a little less Kyle Hamilton in the middle of the field, a little more line of scrimmage, wreaking havoc, disrupting the way that Chris Jones did, the way that Kyle Hamilton has done in the past. So the Ravens need to find a better way to utilize their weapons. Maybe that was by design to have it, but I think moving forward, I would love to see more Kyle Hamilton, less Malik Harrison. I think Trenton Simpson is that guy. You saw the difference when Malik was on the field to when Trenton was on the field. Clear difference. Just pull the trigger. Keep Trenton Simpson as your majority back. Have him out there as your linebacker, and I think the Ravens will flow very well. I think defense is less concerning. Obviously, again, week one, not all these teams look great. In fact, John Harbaugh mentioned it. You heard it. Not a lot of teams look good in week one. As you move forward, you want to see consistency and building upon your performance. I think the Ravens have the tools to be a great defense again this year. The offensive line, however, leaves a lot to be desired. It's going to take a lot more work for that team, that unit to get up to the par of their defense. But we'll see. Long season. Again, week one. You'll never know what happens in the NFL. The team could gel and get it together. But I just think that the individual talents of the guards and the potentially the lack of cohesion is solidifying who your tackle is, leaves a lot to be desired. We'll see, though. We will see. When we come back, we'll have Kevin Oestreicher, host of the Locked On Ravens podcast, as well as Ravens Wire and co-host of the Ryan Rickman Show. He'll be on to talk about the Ravens-Chiefs game and look forward to the Raiders game next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. Again, we have Kevin Oestreicher, who's the host of the Locked On Ravens podcast, as well as one of the co-hosts for the Ryan Rickman Show. Welcome back to the show, man.
I appreciate you having me. Always fun talking with you. And I know it wasn't necessarily a fun game for the Ravens losing, but I thought they actually played decently well. And I feel okay with the loss. I feel like it was a good loss.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. I think it was obviously you want the win, but right. As far as losses go, they showed a lot, especially for a week one matchup with players who didn't even play in the preseason. So I definitely agree with you. I think the Ravens have a lot to build upon, but also some things that have a couple of question marks about. And let's get started with the elephant in the room, the offensive line. Obviously, the offensive line hasn't played well. There was a lot of question marks about it heading into the season, and their play didn't alleviate any of those concerns. How do you feel the offensive line played this week, and do you think that it's going to be something that continues on throughout the regular season?
I think it'll always be a conversation point for us. I think it'll always be some level of a concern. How much of a concern will probably vary week to week, and I do expect them to get better. I just think, again, Tyler Linderbaum didn't really practice for the majority of training camp. They're rotating in a bunch of guys every single day during training camp, trying to figure out who's starting where. That's a lot of non-continuity you're throwing out there. So as the guys start to play with each other more, start to get acclimated with everybody, I think that it will improve. But in week one, we saw the run blocking wasn't great. Seemed like after that first drive, Derrick Henry had a body on top of him in the offensive backfield nearly every play. Pass blocking wise, Chris Jones certainly had his way more times than one with this offensive line, particularly guys like Daniel Falele and Roger Rosengarten. So the big X factor is Ronnie Stanley. I think he played well. He looked healthy, and that's the most important part. But with all this other young depth coming in and starting for you now, it's not like last year, and this honestly goes for the entire Ravens roster, where last year you had a lot of veteran guys starting for you. So that young bunch was the depth. And so if a guy got injured, you put a young guy in, and that was kind of what it was. But now with a lot of that veteran talent gone, particularly on the offensive line where they lost 3 vets, well, now you 3 starters are all of a sudden young guys. Those guys get promotions. And then the depth is now a bunch of even younger guys and guys that might not have that experience or might not be as good. So it almost feels like they have to stay healthy for the whole year on the offensive line. And even if they do, there are still going to be question marks. So it's just like this fickle position that honestly, Sam, kind of reminds me a little bit of that 2022 wide receiver room where they essentially gave the keys to Rashad Bateman and were like, you're our number one after being injured for the first 6 games of the year in your rookie season. And Devin Duvernay was the 2. And we were sitting here saying, well, if Bateman or Duvernay go down, they have nothing left. And both went down in their season. I mean, it was cooked anyway with Lamar going out, but like it was a disaster. So you have to hope they stay healthy, hope they can get more acclimated with each other. I expect it to improve, but I think it'll be a conversation point every week still.
Yeah, and poor Derrick Henry. He goes from a team with a poor offensive line to a team that, Super Bowl aspirations. You got Lamar Jackson, and now he's stuck with the offensive line that leaves a lot to be desired, at least after 1 week of play. How do you think Derrick Henry performed? Do you expect his usage to increase as the season goes along, or do you think that what John Harbaugh says is in fact true, where they didn't bring him in for 30 carries and expect about a 15 to 20 carry back headed into the season?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to give him 30 a game. I think that, you don't want to run him into the ground that way, but I don't think you should have brought him in if you're the Ravens, if you plan on running him in a platoon with Justice Hill. And once Keaton Mitchell comes back, what does that rotation look like? Are they going to kind of split that even more? For Derrick Henry, to me, he should be anywhere from 18 to 22 carries, and that might even be on the lower side. I think in these games where you hope the Ravens have game flow on their side, you might see Derrick Henry hit like 23, 24, 25 carries. Like, that's ideal. And Todd Monken even hinted at this in the offseason where he's like, hey, if Henry's running a lot, that means we're probably winning a lot. So That's exactly it. We're late in the fourth quarter. You want to wear teams down. But in week 1, you mentioned the 13 carries. I don't expect that to become the norm, and I hope it doesn't, because you don't want to have Lamar, kind of have to play hero ball with both his arm and his legs again this season. You want him to be able to go in there, and much like we talked about when Henry was signed, part of the reason is to alleviate some of that stress from Lamar, alleviate some of that pressure from Lamar, and put it on Derrick Henry's plate. And even with the pass catchers, put it on some of their plates. Don't make Lamar play hero ball. You brought in Derrick Henry for a reason, maybe not to give him 30 carries, and I don't expect him to, but I would hope that even with them abandoning game flow a little bit early in the game, and then having game flow dictated late with Justice Hill having a lot of snaps, I don't think it will be the norm. If it is, I'd be pretty shocked.
Yeah, and you mentioned Justice Hill. He had 1 carry for 3 yards. He was in 47 snaps in week 1 against the Chiefs, so that's not a recipe for success whatsoever. I think you have an offensive line that you're already struggling. You're putting more pressure on them, giving to tell that if Justice Hill's on the field, it's likely going to be a pass. So hopefully the Ravens learn their lesson and get more of a running approach with Derrick Henry and being the featured cowbell and take some pressure off of Lamar Jackson. That didn't happen in week 1, and because of that, Lamar Jackson did, in fact, have to play hero ball, and because of that, he was a little sore and missing practice for the first time as they prepare for the Las Vegas Raiders. Do you think that this soreness is going to be an issue moving forward with his usage, or do you think this is going to be a one-time thing, something that Ravens fans shouldn't be concerned about moving forward?
Yeah, I think, and I know players say this all the time, but the best you feel is in training camp. And then once the season starts, obviously it's, you're getting hit all the time. And so Lamar will be sore. I think this was a little different of a circumstance because, he wanted this game. He wanted to beat the Chiefs. And so you saw him be a little more physical than even I think we've seen him ever be, where he was literally like seeking contact. He was lowering his shoulder into guys. Yeah, trying to establish that tone himself. Right? Usually it was Gus. Usually it was JK. Some of these other guys, offensive linemen. But Lamar took it upon himself. So I don't think that's going to be a trend. I think, the Las Vegas game means a lot less to, obviously it still means a lot to win the game, but from a rivalry perspective, a storylines perspective, that game means a lot less than Kansas City does. So to me, I think that he's going to be sore, especially as every quarterback when they take a hit. This isn't just a Lamar thing. Obviously even, every quarterback, Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Stroud, Herbert, everybody, when they take a hit, when they get sacked, when they, run for a gain and get tackled, you're going to feel it in some way, shape, or form. Lamar's over the years been able to protect his body in a lot of different ways. I don't expect him to do what he did consistently in week 1 over the course of the season. I remember, Sam, when he was going out there his rookie season and he was fighting for that 1 extra yard and getting just smashed on every single play. We have come a long way from that Lamar Jackson, but I think that it was I was impressed with him trying to establish the tone, but obviously if any quarterback does that, you probably feel some level of it in some way, shape, or form, regardless of who you are.
For sure, I agree with you completely. I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to do this every game. I think that Chiefs game was just different. A lot of sour taste in the mouths of those players after the AFC Championship game. So definitely wanted to right the ship, but not to be. I think moving forward, Lamar will be a little more careful. Let's shift over to the defense. We had a lot of talk about Lamar versus Patrick Mahomes, but this was Zachary Orr's first time calling plays on any level of football. Definitely a first time calling plays for the Ravens. How do you think he did, taking the mantle away from Mike McDonald as he moves on to Seattle?
Yeah, I think I'd give him a solid B. Obviously, certainly things to clean up for him, and I was expecting as such. I didn't expect this to be sunshine and rainbows, especially considering it was Zach Gore's first ever game calling plays, albeit he did have the playing experience for 3 years, so that is under his belt. Mm-hmm. But it's a different ball game essentially. And going up against Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, back-to-back champs, that's a very tough debut. So I think that the thing that I was most impressed with, if I have to give that out, is this game could have easily been 21-7 heading into halftime. Maybe even worse, where the Ravens have 2 turnovers on offense, one very deep in Ravens territory with that strip sack from Chris Jones, the other one being that failed 4th down play where Nelson Aguilar did not block anybody. He had like 3 options. He decided to block no one. So the Ravens have 2 different scenarios with field position for the Chiefs, and they easily could have scored 2 touchdowns, and that game feels very out of reach for them, especially with the Chiefs getting the ball to start the second half. But just in typical Ravens defensive fashion, it's that bend, don't break. They get down into the red zone and 2 field goals. And 13-7 feels a lot better than 21-7. It was 13-10 at halftime. So you're able to stay within reach, let the offense work through some of their issues. And I thought that in particular was very impressive from that defense. Obviously some personnel things. I'd probably have played Trenton Simpson more if I was Zach Gore over Malik Harrison and that will. And obviously, even though that touchdown to Xavier Worthy was on Marlon passing the guy off and no one being there, that does fall back on you as a defensive coordinator, as any miscue does. So I think that overall it was a solid B, all things considered, and I expect him to continue to improve, much like we talked about the offensive line. I expect him to continue to improve week after week. Yeah,
I'm less concerned with the defense than I am with the offensive line. I think, as you mentioned, this, it's going to be a growing pains. He's going to get acclimated to being a defensive coordinator. And, what a first test against one of the greatest to ever do it in Andy Reid. So kudos to Zachary Orr. And I think was a decent job, besides the miscue of Marlon Humphrey letting Xavier Worthy go. I think it was a pretty good first game for Zachary Orr. But let's stop talking about the Chiefs. We're done. I've done it for 9 months. Let's move on to the next opponent, the Las Vegas Raiders. They come to town, home opener for the Ravens. The Raiders did lose to the Los Angeles Ravens, as I like to call them, because, pretty much every single player on there has a tie to Baltimore. Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins leading that rushing charge and having success against the Raiders. Do you think that success continues with Derrick Henry coming to town and battling those Las Vegas Raiders?
I do, and I expect them to hopefully at least try to establish the running game a lot earlier in the game. I just thought that they had it right in front of them against Kansas City to be able to, with 5 carries for Derrick Henry, the Chiefs already being able to cheat in on him and pay for it with Lamar taking the ball to the outside, working play action off of it we saw a couple of times. That's exactly what they need to do in this Week 2 game, because they didn't do it in Week 1, and then game flow got away from them, and they had to switch up their identity, and they had to switch up what they wanted to do. But in this game, I think if you can get out to an early 10-0 lead, you can get out to an early 14-3 lead, maybe something along those lines, you will be able to go and just feed Derrick Henry. Just be able to feed him, and especially against a team. You mentioned it, J.K. Dobbins, 10 carries, 135 yards, looked good. That explosiveness in terms of that breakaway speed still not there. He's not necessarily rookie J.K. Dobbins anymore, but he looked good against that Raiders defense that, hey, you know what? They brought in Christian Wilkins in the offseason. They have Max Crosby. So another tough test for this offensive line, but I expect it to go a lot better than the Chiefs game did, if not for the fact that now you kind of have that Week 1 rust off your back and you can kind of move forward.
Yeah, hopefully this game gave Daniel Faalele a chance to get in tune to being a NFL starting right guard, and Max Crosby may be I don't know. It's hard to decide Max Crosby and Chris Jones are, neck and neck as far as pass rushers go, but they both present different challenges, and it's something that he'll need to work on. But I think I agree with you. I think the Ravens will come back in this game and actually establish the run and actually have success against it. And they better, because, up next are a couple of teams that can definitely hamper their playoff hopes. Before we get into the closing remarks, I just want to get your thoughts on the Ravens usage. You mentioned Trenton Simpson not getting a lot of work done. I also didn't see enough of Nate Wiggins, in my opinion, especially going up against a fast receiver as Xavier Worthy. He did get up, I think, about 18 snaps, which is a lot more than some may think, but I think he may deserve a little more snaps moving forward. What are your thoughts about the usage of these players? I know we talked about Rosengarten needing to get a little more time, I think, but what about the defenders?
Yeah, I think that, Trenton Simpson to me should be the full-time will. And it didn't necessarily shock me that they did this with Malik Harrison. We have seen time and time again that the Ravens tend to favor vets over younger players with inexperience.
Oh, yeah.
Especially early in the season. And we kind of see it either be a timeshare between veteran and young player, or the vet will just play and the young player won't. Even after we hype up the young guy and we see all the young guys making plays, the Ravens still go with the vet. So Malik Harrison, he's still going to have a role on this defense, especially with Kyle Van Noy being out with the eye injury.
Yeah,
they want to use him in that package of, we're going to use him behind Tyus Bowser when he was still in Baltimore as like backup Sam, and they still will use him on the outside. And I think if you want to use him there, that's fine. But as the will, I just think with Simpson, his athleticism, his ability to make things happen, he made a couple of huge plays in this game. I think that's where you have to go. He showed it in the preseason. I don't think he did anything to deserve to have snaps taken away from him. But, it's kind of a week one thing where Baltimore's like, this guy's been here. They kind of just trust the experience. And I feel like that is both a good and a bad thing in certain situations. In this particular situation, it was a bad thing because we also saw Jalen Armour-Davis getting a lot of time, at least more time than I thought he was going to get. In terms of Nate Wiggins, you mentioned the 18 snaps. I thought this was this is kind of like what I kind of sold people on Nate Wiggins about. It's like, hey, Chiefs go get Xavier Worthy. Well, guess what? You got a speed corner in Nate Wiggins. And then we only saw him for 18 snaps, and we're like, all right, well, I guess not. I guess that's not what we're doing here. So if there's a rematch in the playoffs, the young guys, Simpson, Wiggins, they'll be on the field for it. But week one usage, I am with you. I certainly expected to see a little more of both those guys.
Yeah, it'd been nice to see him. Nate Wiggins, I guess you can make a case that, they have dogs in the DB room. So I can see maybe not having him, but with the speed matchup, I thought it was just, odd that he wasn't on there. But Trent Simpson, get that guy on the field at all times. It's just a different defense when he's on there. So hopefully Zachary Orr learns his lesson. He's got a lot of time with those linebackers being with the Ravens. So maybe there's some, favoritism a little bit. I'm just speaking out the mouth. I don't really know. But I just think that moving forward, you got to get Trent Simpson involved more in this defense. And I think they'll be better for it. Well, I appreciate you for joining us. I know it's been a tough week with Chiefs football, and now you have the rest of the season to look forward to. But, that Chiefs loss really hurt a lot of Ravens fans. But we got a lot of games left, and I'm pretty sure these two teams will meet again in the postseason. Thanks again for joining us. Let the folks at home know where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me as always, Sam. Always a blast talking with you. You can find me over on Locked On Ravens. So 5 days a week plus more, we have daily Ravens coverage for you, and we go into everything, news, analysis, updates. So if you are in need of some daily Ravens content, you can follow over there, subscribe on YouTube, and also subscribe in audio form for that. I also write over at the Ravens Wire for USA Today, so you can find my written content, Ravens Wise, over there. I also do some work for Bleacher Report and also the Ryan Ripken Show, where we talk some baseball, talk some football, talk some sports topics. So always sports for me, and it's always a blast doing it.
Dude, I really don't know. After all these years, I still don't get how you do it. Just more and more on your plate each year. It's crazy. And you still keep the quality up. So definitely, I'm sure if you're a Ravens fan, you already know about him. So definitely check out his stuff. And of course, we'll love to have you on again very soon. I'm sure we will have you on very soon to talk more Ravens. When we come back, we'll close out the show, talk a little bit about what we expect from the Ravens and Raiders game coming up next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. Again, that was Kevin Oestreicher with the Locked On Ravens podcast, also a Ravens Wire, and one of the co-hosts for the Ryan Ripken Show. Definitely enjoy having him on. We have him on all the time. A few frequent viewers of the show would know. Always a pleasure to have Kevin on, and we'll definitely have him on again pretty soon. Said a lot of important things, a lot of things that make sense about this offensive line. Definitely reiterated what I thought. I just think that this Ravens team has what it takes still to win a championship. I think this first Ravens game against the Chiefs didn't do anything to dissolve my enthusiasm for this roster. The offensive line, even though I played poorly, I still have faith in the fact that they'll get it together. Lots of decisions need to be made about this personnel grouping. Lots of decisions the coaching staff have to make, but the talent's still there. The unit is still intact. You got Derrick Henry, you got Lamar Jackson, you got Matabike, you got Roquan Smith, you got Kyle Hamilton. Just the layers, the foundation of a great team. Superstars all around. This team is going places, and Todd Monken looking like a great fit for this team. We'll see what happens in week 2. Maybe I'm just, a little too excited because week 1 looks so different from the other weeks in years prior. But I just think that the Ravens have what it takes to keep it going. Of course, a week 2 matchup against the Raiders is coming up. Max Crosby presents all types of challenges. I'm sure the Raiders were drooling watching the play of the interior lineman, so I'm almost positive Max Crosby will be all over the line on Sunday. Whether that's enough to win, we'll see. The Raiders don't really have a star QB. There's no Patrick Mahomes on the center for the Raiders, so that leaves a lot to be desired. It pretty much guarantees the Ravens will be favorites in this game, but will that be enough? It doesn't matter. The betting lines don't matter. What I think don't matter clearly. I picked the Ravens to win twice in a row against the Chiefs and lost both times. So we'll see. But the Ravens do, in fact, have a team to be feared. And if they set the tone again in this game, and I know there's going to be a lot of guys waiting to set that tone, even though there may be some lag and adrenaline and enthusiasm, emotion after all of that was laid on the field in Arrowhead on Thursday. But I think the Ravens do need to set the tone in this game, become a dominant football team, and show the world that they're a team to be feared. They're going to be very interested and we're very intrigued to see how this plays out for the Ravens in week 2 against the Raiders. It's going to be a home opener. The fans are going to be loud. I know the guys are going to be there, and it's going to be very fun to watch what the Ravens and company do in week 2 against the Raiders. That's going to do it for us here at Ravens Talk. Definitely a pleasure talking to you guys, as always. Next week, we'll start our bi-weekly one on, one off. We're going to have a show dedicated to the Raiders game, and then a show moving forward to week 3 in the NFL season. But for this week, we're going to do one episode because of the Pivotal Moments YouTube special that I had on YouTube. That will still keep going too, but it took a little more time to get together because of a first time doing it. Just working out the kinks here at Ravens Talk. So if you're a fan, definitely go on the YouTube and look at Ravens Talk Show. We are going to have a lot more All 22 action. Also, follow me on Twitter at Ravens Talk Pod and on Instagram, where all my folks are at Ravens Talk Podcast. And it's going to be quite the season. Do not give up hope. If you're a Ravens fan, I'm just going to be honest with you. If the Ravens do bad, I'll tell you why they do bad. If they do good, I'll be singing their praises. And I'm telling you, the Ravens are far from done, especially it being only week 1 in the regular season. That's going to do it for us here at Ravens Talk. We'll see you next week.